Hey there guys, and welcome to this episode number 7 of the Your Progress is Our Passion podcast. Really hope that you enjoyed our interview with Ellie last week and that you've thought about different ways in which you can introduce a few more plants and vegetables into your diet, regardless of whether you're a vegan or not. It's such a great beneficial way to introduce more nutrients and a bit more variety, a bit more difference into your diet. I'm back next week with a different interview with a good friend of mine, a guy called James Buck. Absolutely wonderful guy, performs extremely well in everything I've seen him try and do, and someone who just basically turned his passion, or is in the process of turning his passion into his business, which is just wonderful to see. This week I want to talk about something that literally came on my mind this morning. It's funny how I had a different idea for what I wanted to say today and what I had planned for how I was going to record the podcast, but then I was sitting around and thinking about a concept that myself and a lot of other people who work with mental health are now talking about a lot, which is the fact that we all have mental health just how we all have physical health. This is something that the guys from Sanctus, who I hope to interview one day, they talk about an awful lot. And the fact that it's a spectrum of health. So whereas on the physical health side of things, we have things like, colds, tummy aches, bugs, viruses and all that type of stuff, right up to the more serious stuff like cancer. There's that variety there, there's that spectrum of varying degrees of health. And the same is true for mental health. There's a great big spectrum, and every one of us is somewhere on it. So the idea of thinking of someone who has a mental health problem, it's a little bit redundant these days, and it's one of the things that's helping to keep the stigma going around mental health and the issues that are surrounding it. But whilst I was thinking about this analogy about mental health and physical health, I thought it got me thinking about our immune system. Now, this is one way I want to suggest that our physical health and mental health are also similar. With our physical health, we have an immune system. Immune system comes in sort of 2 different categories. I'm not going to go into the full details of it here, but we've got an immune system that is a response, and a general immune system, and a specific immune system, one that remembers the diseases that we've had in the past. It's how immunisation works. But with our mental health, it's not something we've ever really associated as having an immune system. I've deliberately not gone and looked this up because I didn't want anyone else's thoughts to affect what I was thinking about it today. I may go and see who else has done some research on this after I finish recording the podcast. But with our physical immune system, we all know there are things that we can do to help aid that, to help improve that. So things like getting a moderate amount of exercise, getting a good night's sleep, eating a varied diet, taking our vitamins, nutrients, making sure either that's encompassed within our diet or that we're supplementing and taking vitamins there. All of these things actually help, and also in a way, our immune system is actually helped by a degree of exposure to pathogens, to small degrees of viruses. Again, this is how immunization works. The whole, I don't know if you've ever seen the film The Aviator. I've never actually seen the film, but I know the story about Harold Hughes, the guy who basically becomes so germophobic that he keeps himself away from any possible bacteria, and in turn actually the lack of exposure to bacteria causes his immune system to drop, to almost disappear. So there is a certain degree of exposure to something that would necessarily be seen as bad that we would consider. And we're all reasonably familiar with these ideas, like if someone gets a cold quite a few times in a row, you might say, oh, the immune system's like a little bit knackered, and that person actually might go and have that checked. There are various different stresses and strains that can lead to an immune system becoming knackered. Is totally the technical word for it, by the way. So less efficient, we shall say, working less efficient. But I want to talk about the idea of this in regards to our mental health now, and put forward that there are, again, certain things that we can do to help our mental immunity. Now, the immune system in our mental health, there is, to my knowledge, no immune system when it comes to our mental health. However, there are certain things that allow us to cope with stresses and strains better. We talked about a few of these in my class today, And if you've seen the video I've done on the bridge analogy, it's definitely worth checking out on my YouTube channel. And it's about how stress is ultimately our ability to handle stress and strain is like having a bridge, and the amount of weight that goes onto that bridge. Ultimately, the bridge will crumble underneath a certain amount of weight. But if we can manage the weight that's on that bridge, we can effectively stop, keep things running smoothly. And the same is very much true with our mental health. There are things that we can do, and these will vary from individual to individual, but there are things that we can do that can help us become more mentally resilient to situations that might come our way. So, for example, having a good night's sleep. This is one way to help with your mental immune system. You might notice that when you've had a bad night's sleep, you're on a shorter fuse the next day. Now, if you've got, almost perfect mental health, that might just come across as a little bit of anger or a little bit of irritability. But if you're somewhere further along on the mental health spectrum, that might actually start to trigger a condition or a response that you don't necessarily want. So getting a good night's sleep is essentially one of the very good ways in which we can help us to sustain this load. Because ultimately the main thing here is the idea about avoiding all stresses, like the Harold Hughes situation, is not going to be the best way of dealing with things, because ultimately you avoid all stresses. I often say about how everyone can meditate at the monastery, or everyone can be peaceful at the monastery. I want to be able to do that in day-to-day life. This isn't about avoiding those situations, because if we take all the stresses out of our lives, then when a stress comes along, it's going to have more weight for us than it would be to someone. The immune system is lower. Our resilience to defend ourselves against that particular pathogen, that particular stress, is going to be lower than someone who has had exposure. And again, the expression "the devil is in the dose" here, like there is a certain point of too much exposure, which too many stresses, too many things, too many pathogens or toxins, whatever you want, whatever phrase you want to put on it, too many things coming in. So it's important to kind of learn how to deal with those stresses. A good night's sleep will ensure that you are better prepared. I'm not going to say it's the be-all and end-all and it's the one answer, but it will ensure that you are better prepared to handle those stresses when they come in. Your nutrients are another one. A lot of the ones that work on your physical immune system will always work on this mental immune system that I'm hypothesizing here. So good amount of nutrients, again, our body's going to be functioning better. If we've got the correct levels of, say, our omega-3s or vitamin D3, all these things that help with our cognitive abilities, these will all help us to make better decisions, to handle stresses better. They will, make us a little bit more immune to those stresses that are coming in. So meditation is another idea. Now, one of the guys at our class today actually pointed out, and I would like to put this in here, that meditation is particularly good for depression and anxiety and those things. But if we are dealing with, on the spectrum, things of like psychosis or hallucinations or anything like that, meditation can actually be counterproductive. So if that is where you fall within that spectrum, perhaps speak to a counsellor or a medical professional before you actually undertake meditation. I honestly, before today, would never have thought I would have to put a disclaimer on about meditation. Thought it was brilliant for everyone, but I've had that pointed out to me today, and I feel like I would be a little bit negligent if I neglected to mention that. But meditation, if you are safe to do so, I often use mine as a cure rather than a prevention. So I wish I meditated a little bit more often, and I probably should put that into better practice. But again, it stills the mind, it gives you that breathing space, it buffers you from any of those stresses that are going to come in, and it slows your reaction time to them, which in turn gives you that time to react better and thus handle the situation better, have more choices on how you are going to handle the situation. Speaking of sort of delayed reactions, learning to delay our reactions is one amazing thing that you can do to buffer and to help with your mental health. If your initial reaction to every situation is to go off in the same direction, so say someone cuts you up into traffic and your initial reaction is to swear at that person, beep your horn, shout, rant, rave, drive up the backside of the person, whatever that might be, all things that are going to put you in a negative state. If you learn to delay that reaction, and when that reaction, you feel that reaction coming, just take a beat, take a breath, take a second, take a few seconds, and just breathe and decide, I want to choose something else. I want to choose a different way, a different path, a different idea. Same is true in interactions with people that may, the expression's been coming now known as triggering you or triggering me. I'm not a big fan of that expression, I've got to say, because it puts the blame on the other person, and I think putting the blame on another person is only it can be slightly empowering to some, but I always find that if someone else has control over my condition, my mood, my anxiety levels, my depression, that is one of the least empowering things, I think. So when someone else says something and you find that your reaction is to their, rather than thinking of them triggering you, think of it as you reacting to what they're doing, and that you actually have a choice in how to react. So even if, again, you take that breath, you decide, before I react to this, before I do this knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to take a pause, and then I'm going to choose a different way to react. I'm going to ask myself, is what I was about to say going to make the situation better or worse? And the beautiful thing about this particular technique is, the more you practice that, the better you become at delaying that, but also the habit you have now of reacting in the negative way, if you practice reacting in the positive way, that becomes your habit in the future. So say the person cuts you up in traffic and you decide that you're actually just going to wish them well and wish them a safe journey. Doesn't need to be out loud. It can be out loud if you want it to be. You'll probably get, weirdly enough, you'll probably get called strange if someone else is in the car for you, because the natural reaction we expect is to swear at the person. However, you wish that person well. First of all, it's not really going to have any difference on that person. However, it will have a difference on you, and you are the person I care about. You're the person who I'm wanting to help make progress. You wish that person well. Watch the difference it has in your body, in your physiology, and how you feel. You will feel physiologically better than you would from swearing at the person. And that, again, if that becomes your habit over time and that becomes the way you go automatically, you'll always get that good feeling when someone cuts you up. And is that not a better situation to be in than to be in a situation where you always react? Super important skill. Again, works wonderfully in relationships where you go down the same paths every single time a topic comes up. You change that path from your side, it changes for the person at the other side too. It changes the outcome you get. It's also going to set you up for feeling in control. So in a situation that might make you increasingly anxious, you gain back that control, and this is going to do wonders for your mental health. So all of this, I'm just going to kind of summarize there. All of this is to do with an idea I've got called your mental immune system. And it's looking at different ways in which you can make yourself not necessarily immune to episodes of your mental health, but certainly significantly more resilient. Okay, so it's going to take a bigger strain of the virus, so to speak, a stronger cold, a new strain of flu. It's going to take that to actually then be the thing that you have to overcome. And though that might not be perfect, and we always want it to be in a situation where nothing ever really bothers us, if we can be bothered less by the smaller things, and will in turn be bothered less by the bigger things, it's still a significant progress from every little thing coming along, your immune system being low, and us catching a cold, so to speak. Again, I'm using a lot of analogies here, but us catching a depression, I will call it, or catching a spell of anxiety off the tiniest of little bugs that goes around. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you found some value in this. I'm really loving this idea. I can't wait to kind of expand on it further, and I'm going to look around and see what other people have been talking about on this too, if it's been talked about, which I imagine it has done. I'm not egotistical enough to think I'm the first person in the world to have come up with this idea. But yeah, if you can relate to this, I'd really love to hear what you think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd really also love to hear the things that you do that make you more resilient, that make you better equipped to handle the stresses and strains mentally that life throws at you. Again, I really hope to see you guys next week on the interview with James Buck. Really looking forward to that. Super inspirational guy. And yeah, again, as always, please do me the favor of spreading this, of tagging a friend in it who needs to hear it, or of reviewing us on iTunes, or I really need to learn the name of the place. In fact, I'm going to find it right now because I'm sat at the computer. Podbean. Podbean is the thing that I've got for Android if you're on there. So yeah, if you could do me the honour of sharing it on there, giving us a rating on either of those platforms, on iTunes or on Podbean. And yeah, thanks very much. And I will see you next time on Your Progress is Our Passion.